Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan C.P. Steele, and I'll be your nerd today. Real quick, just so people aren't like messing with their phones or their tablets or their computers or whatever they watch this on, there is going to be a slight hum in the back of this video because my air conditioner is running. I don't know if you watched last week's video, but it got kind of warm and sweaty in here, and I was sort of grumpy about that. So I bought a kind of studio size little personal air conditioning device, and it has a very low hum to it. So if you hear that in the background, it is not your ears, it is not your device, it's actually on the video. Hopefully I won't need that very much longer, as that the summer heat spike will start to dip back down again. Currently I really do need it, because otherwise these videos will be extremely short-lived because I won't be able to live without having the air conditioning on. Alright, so as I like to do in all of them, just kind of the week in the life of the Bryan. It's been kind of a, I don't want to say a boring week, but it hasn't really been much different from last week. Still working on a bunch of cool Alter Quest stuff for Blacklist Games. Finished up all of the pre-scenario stuff for the Spelljammer charity event. Got everybody printed out. Got all my encounters statted out in case certain things turn into fights. Some things are obviously going to be fights. How weird would that be? You go to a D&D event and they talk their way out of every single combat. But yeah, just sort of Gen Con prep. Getting some painting commissions done, which actually, if you looked at today's episode name, it is Hobby Time is Story Time. I got my rig to work again, my setup rig. So we're gonna do some more hobby time where you get to just chit chat and talk about painting, and while I'm working on some. I think today I'm working on some Fallout barriers, and maybe get some base coats on some Guild Ball guys. But yeah, basically, it's just been a lot of me trying to get all my ducks in a row. So, quick tangent. Get all your ducks in a row. I understand that. I'm sure that the colloquialism is because, a parent duck keeps track of all their baby ducklings by getting them all rowed up behind them. But in my head, it always comes out as getting your ducks lined up like one of those shooting gallery things at like a amusement park or county fair. And that seems, in my brain, that seems super backwards, because you're lining up all your ducks, you're getting all your ducks in a row so they can be shot. Again, my brain doesn't work like normal folks, but just to let you know, next time you say that, I'm getting all my ducks in a row, you're going to think and be like, oh man, all my ducks are going to get shot. Damn it, Bryan! Alright, tangent over. But yeah, so basically, just kind of getting my Gen Con stuff prepped. Just got to cover up my little ID thing, but I got my badge. And my cool Superman lanyard that I always wear a different lanyard, whether it's my Knocking Point stuff or if it's for supporting a particular game, or in this case it's just a Superman one that came with one of my many DC comic boxes. I never wear the actual Gen Con or Origins or wherever the lanyard unless I forget one of mine. Mine are also almost always decorated with pins and things. Although I will admit that I do not do the ribbon thing. Like if there's one that you need, like for, I was at a show a while back and all of the guests, the industry guests, had to wear a little shiny ribbon on their badge. I'm assuming that's because it's to let the staff of the convention know, hey, that person's supposed to be where they're at, or whatever. I don't know. I don't know the specifics. But I go to a lot of these shows, and especially if it's one that like Mayfair Games is hosting, like Catan tournaments or lots of Catan events. where people will have 10, 15, 20 of these ribbons, going down there, down the underside of their badges. And I guess, it's like Pokemon, collect them all, but I just can't get my brain around it. Because that would make me crazy, have that thing dangling in front of me. I generally don't even like wearing a badge. I wish I could just pin it to me or something. Yeah, it's a dangling thing that flip-flops and whatever. Yeah, so if you ever see me wearing ribbons, it is either because I'm doing somebody a favor, because somebody has asked me nicely, hey, wear this to support our cause, or it's because the show kind of requires it for whatever I'm doing at that show. Speaking of DC Comics, so in a flurry, there's no question that I'm a huge DC Comics, DC media, DC, if it has to do with the longevity of Detective Comics and all of its offshoots, I'm probably down on it. Like, it's probably a big thing for me. But as of late, there was something that just sort of, it struck a chord with me, and I think it was in a Twitter conversation, that I have had an idea rolling around in my head. And yes, I am well aware that, unless I can somehow flex some connections that I only barely have, and very tenuously at that, it is a pipe dream to ever get, to get this to happen. But I think as of this week, I started jotting down the outlines, and I've got so much other stuff that needs to get done first. But I always like to have at least something kind of on the back in the back burner of my brain, that I can fall on if I'm like, oh hey, I really need to do something today. I want to do some kind of project for myself. I need to wash all this other stuff out of my brain. I started working on a screenplay, because I have an idea in my head that, as a moviegoer and a DC Comics aficionado and just a fanboy of those sorts of things, I really, 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 there's just this idea that I have to get out on the paper, and I'm sure, it's like winning the lottery. Nothing will ever come of it. I'll try. I'll send it to all the people I need to send it to, and beg, borrow, and steal my way to success if I have to. But steal spelled my name, not like theft, because that would be wrong. But that needs to be the name of a book that I write. Beg, borrow, or steal your way to success? Ah. Whoa. Alright. This is how my brain works. So yeah, I started jotting down the outline to a DC Comics inspired screenplay. And it is not one that I have ever heard someone pitch before, or any San Diego Comic-Con was last week, so we got to hear a lot of, hey, this is the stuff that's coming up, and DC Universe, the online subscription service, is going strong, so who knows, maybe I can get this thing in front of the right people at the right time, and it'll be a made for streaming one-off movie, or they'll carve it up into a miniseries, or nothing will ever happen of it, and I'll get to show some people, and hopefully they will not laugh in my face. Whatever the case may be, this is the sting of the creative, is that you've got a dozen ideas in your head rattling around, and every once in a while one of them falls into place and goes, I require some lovin', and this is the one that required some lovin' at the moment. Of course, this does not mean that any of my contracted work gets shirked. I will not let deadlines slip and such because of these things. I still have a novella and a bunch of novels to write with a buddy of mine. There's no deadline on them, but I need to get that stuff started. I need to get those things moving, because those were really good ideas too that fell into place at one moment, and then life got in the way, and I needed to pay bills. So the life of the freelance creator is, I got to go where the money is, but there's always going to be that little that thing in the back that's like, hey, it's not going to make you any money. It might not ever make you any money, but whoa, you really need to do it. And that's kind of what this is, the screenplay idea, and some of these other side projects. But so this week has been the week in the life of Bryan. A lot of Gen Con prep, a lot of trying to fix up some contracts, get myself paid right before Gen Con, so I can have some spending money while I'm there. Set up a couple of meetings while I was there, or meetings while I'll be there. Hopefully, fingers crossed on one of them, that it'll be a steady gig that will work kind of alongside this freelance stuff. Still driving my Lyft a couple days a week, just a couple hours in the evening. It's kind of fun. There's a part of me that thinks that there's a story there, just because of some of the people I get to talk to, and I live in a college town, and so most of the nights that I'm driving, I get a lot of dates that didn't go well, dates that went very well, and a lot of drunks, people who've had a little bit of the sauce. And it's fun. I get to tell stories and talk to these people and hear what's going on with their life. And the serendipitous as it is, I've run into 3 different people that either I know or know me, or we have a common friend that it's like, I think I've met you before, that sort of thing. But it had been 10, 15 years since those connections had been made. So there's a lot of like, I think maybe I know you, but I don't. I'm not sure. There was one aspiring comic book graphic artist that, when we were talking back and forth, she brought up the fact that she's looking for a writer for her comic book. So I had my business cards in the car, and I gave her one of my freelance cards. I don't think anything will come out of it. She's a 19-year-old something in school for a completely different reason. She just does comic graphics on the side, but you never know. And I guess that's kind of, aside from helping me pay bills and whatnot, and a little extra spending cash, it's kind of an additional way for me to meet interesting characters and have interesting interactions. I'm gonna sound super artsy fartsy here for a second, but writing characters, writing believable. I did a seminar on writing believable characters in fiction, and the number one rule that I always had was it needs to be believable within the paradigm that you're writing. Like if you're in a world that is super high magic and flying cars and robots that do all your homework for you and all that sort of thing, then those characters can be believable within that scope. But there's always going to be certain aspects of humanity, even if they're not human, certain aspects of socialized sentience that will always come to the front. And unless you redesign how people work, every interaction, every character you read, everything you see on Netflix, everything a character that you've read in a book or see in a comic book, there's facets of all of these things that you can kind of take into your mind blender and make a smoothie that is the coolest thing that you can write. And because you've seen it, and because you've read it, and because you've experienced it, as a writer that is feasible. That it's this character might be momentarily unbelievable, but overall, unless that person is legitimately, breaking the reality of your world, they could exist. Hopefully, you'll be able to portray that in a way that people will believe in the character, and they'll go, oh man, I met a guy like that once. Or I remember when I went out to the clubs dancing and there was that guy doing that thing. So part of what this kind of lift thing for me is, and again, I wasn't sure I wanted to do this, but when contracts are light, or when when bills come a calling, I decided to try this out, and I'm really kind of glad that I am, because yeah, sure, money, but it's a neat way for me to add to kind of my mental reservoir of personality quirks, individual things that people might say or do or interact with. Again, reality can change from place to place, but overall, people don't. And this gives me kind of a moving constant case study in people. Yeah, so I guess that's kind of it for my week. It's weird that I kind of went on that little creative tangent. But I guess this week is about creative tangents, because since we are going to be taking a week off for Gen Con next week, there will not be a new episode next week. I might try and go live from my phone if possible. Maybe for a few minutes to kind of check in, say hi to everybody. Maybe because I know I've got several role-playing events. Maybe I can go live from one of the events for just a couple minutes, say hi to everybody and whatnot. I don't know. So I'm not promising anything, but do not expect another. There will definitely not be a regular Tales From episode next week. But that being said, my D&D Spelljammer charity event going on that Saturday, I've got my cameraman. He is going to be recording it. Hopefully the sound in that room will be efficient enough to be able to hear everything that's going on. I'm hoping we theatrical types tend to project pretty well. But as the case may be, the goal is to hopefully in 2 weeks put up the video. It'll be a long one. It'll probably be close to 3 hours long, maybe a little bit with intro and outro. But the goal is to have that video up so you guys can enjoy the Spelljammer game. And for the people who will see me at other shows in the future, or see me possibly running other events, or maybe I'll get off my ass and plan one of these everybody online Twitch things. I don't know. I don't know what the future may hold, but I do want to get that episode out there for people to see. So if all goes well, I'll be live a little bit next week from Gen Con, and then the following week we should have the video from the charity event all cleaned up and all edited in and loaded up for people to enjoy on YouTube. So yeah, I guess without further ado, let's pop over to the hobby rig and get a little painting done, and tell some fun stories, because that's what today's about. Hobby time is story time. See you in a minute. Hi, welcome to the hobby rig. So I got everything set back up, and I figured we'll get to painting. So today we are going to be looking at, I got some cool Modifius Fallout barricade sets, which are super cool. Like, these are just neat. Even if you're not into like the Fallout universe and you play skirmish games where like sci-fi junk piles could be a thing, this is well worth it. And then if I get time, I'm going to put some base coats on some Guild Ball rat catchers that I'm painting for a client, hopefully having them done by Gen Con. And if my resin is done setting by the end of this, I'm going to pop out, I've been making some the Sumerian year 519 blood guilt for some of the old Dark Age fans, and I poured some resin right before we started shooting, and so if it cures all the way before we're done, maybe you'll get to pop those out of the molds and you get to see see a couple of finished products for some of the people that I'm bringing to at Gen Con. So without further ado, let's move this camera rig thing. Transition. How cool is that? All right. Okay, so where was I I had just done some of the reds. So basically, these barricades are made up of a bunch of recognizable junk from Fallout, and because it's recognizable junk, I've got some general paint schemes that I want to stick to, and then the whole thing, because it is, again, junk, is going to get just a giant bath in various washes to really kind of hammer it home that this stuff is, well, piles of junk that are being used to protect the people behind the way. Alright, so I think there's a couple of trash cans. The ice machines are going to end up being white. The refrigerators, I might actually do those kind of a Frigidaire blue, just because it'll break up some of the monotony of the paint schemes. And then there's some lockers, which I think will end up being like kind of a cobalt blue. And then when you get a chance to take a look at some of these, I don't want them to. I'm not mass. I mean, these are all for the same client, so I'm not going to just mass produce the same thing again and again and again. And because of that, I'm going to switch up some of the paint jobs, because if they're all sitting on the table, I don't want them to. I don't want the client to look at it and go, "Oh, okay, so it's the same." You just basically cranked it out. That's not okay as far as I'm concerned. Now, I've already done a bunch of work on these over the last couple of days, weeks, if you really want to be honest. What I had done is, because I knew a lot of this stuff was going to be metallic, at least on the under part, the undercoat, I primed them white, and then painted them, or no, did I prime them black? I think I may have primed them black. And then I did a very heavy, almost base coat dry brush of one of my kind of dull silvers, because knowing that all this stuff is going to be junk and it's going to look like it's all weathered and beaten up and, you know, it's been put through the ringer, the base coats that are going to go on top of it, that are on top of the metal, like, so here, if you get a chance to take a look, that green, I'm specifically not, I'm not doing a heavy dry brush or a full base coat there, because I want some of that metal to shine through. I want it to look like it's been beaten up, kicked over, you know, bullets have ricocheted off of it, you know, that sort of thing. That's the effect that I'm looking for. So because of that, I don't want it to be a perfect coat of paint. Similarly, so we've got a safe in the like a Fallout safe. A lot of the safes in Fallout are just kind of brown. There are a few that are like a dull green, some that are set into walls and things like that. So I'm doing one of these in green and the other one in a couple of various shades of copper and brown. Again, just to break up the monotony. I don't want them. I don't want it to look like the exact same thing twice. As I'm kind of flipping through these things, you'll be able to see that there's 2 of each sculpt in the pack, and or my client bought 2 packs. I didn't even think about that. But the I don't want them to look identical, so there's also a lot of like boards and things, like wooden slats and stuff that go over the back. I'm gonna paint those in multiple different colors of brown, because that's going to help make it so when I hit everything with a wash, that it'll look like these boards came off of multiple different objects. Did they pry it off of someone's house? Did they pry it out of a fence? Did they, is it just, lumber that was never treated? These are questions that most people would never ask. But when I'm painting, I like to have that kind of story in my mind, because it gives me, it gives me kind of inspiration to make sure that I do these objects as I feel they should be, they would appear. Like, would I paint, this particular barricade has got a locker on it. Would I paint this locker a crazy shiny gold, like chrome style gold? No, of course not, because never in any of the Fallout games have we ever seen a chrome shiny gold locker, and in reality that doesn't seem like something you'd see very often. Would I, if a client asked me to? Sure, I would do just about anything. I say just about because even I, I know everyone says everybody has their price or whatnot. Even I have a point where I would say no, I'm not gonna do that. A while back, this is probably 10 years ago, when I was doing nothing. I was just getting kind of my commission conversion business up and running. I was taking a lot of vehicle kits from other games, and using plastic card and pipe and putty and whatever to make these new things. And one of my clients asked me to do a looted emperor. Now, for people who are not into the lingo, for Warhammer 40,000, the Emperor is this like godlike being who used to run around and solve all the universe's problems through fascism, but he's also like this godly psychic character that I just totally dripped paint right onto my finger. Gross. And when he died, when he gets mortally wounded, they put him in this golden throne, this like big chair thing that allows his psychic waves to continue to do their psychic stuff, and additionally, it allows him to stay alive for the eventual time when he will return to the galaxy and save the day. Very Jesus-y storyline kind of thing. So in 40K at the time, the orcs, which are orcs, I mean the big green scary dudes that run around and start fights, they had a rule that they could loot other people's vehicles. And there was I don't know, it was a webcomic or something. Somebody made the comment that what would happen if the orcs got a hold of the Golden Throne. And the jokes began that it would turn into, basically they would loot the Golden Throne, put it on the back of a battle wagon, and make like the most psychic battle wagon of all time, and it would be brilliant. So, fast forward, a client gets a hold of me and says, I want you to make a looted emperor. And
at the time, there was a part of me that really kind of wanted to say no, because I did the whole, that's really stupid, and I don't want to ever see that on the battlefield, because I was very judgy back then. Um, I know some people are like, back then. And so, so I quoted him a price, and I quoted him a price that was slightly more than what I would do to convert a vehicle of that, because it was also going to include, he wanted like a character level paint job on a vehicle. And that's gonna cost you. You know, my prices weren't that high back then because I really wasn't well known, but you know, it was definitely something that he was going to have to pay for. And in doing so, he said, that sounds great. Let's do it. Let's do that project. And I built this looted emperor, which was basically a giant orc battle wagon that, instead of a giant turret gun thing in the back, there was a like comatose space marine and Terminator armor sitting on a throne that was all hardwired into shiny gold Terminator armor, I might add. It was all hardwired into the battle wagon. And so, as far as his game rules was going to be concerned, as the battle wagon's big cannon was the Emperor's brainwaves or something. I don't know. Again, I did it because the money was right. And what was funny is the end result, like the actual end product, was one of my better paint jobs at the time. Like, the Emperor had really good facial definition, and I thought it was funny that I really didn't want to do the project because I thought it was a stupid idea, but I undertook it because contracts and money are good. And the end result actually turned out to be really cool. And I don't know if the client still has it, or if he still uses it, or if it's even somebody who pays attention to, like, is on my Facebook or anything. But I kind of wish I would have taken some more pictures of it. I don't have any, because at the time I was so wrapped up in my own brain about having to have made this thing that I didn't take any shots of it. I didn't take any photos of it. And I think that was a mistake, because even though it is a goofy concept and the story is kind of derptastic, it was a really good project, and I am kind of kicking myself for not keeping tabs on it like I should have. And again, hindsight's 2020, and having now 10, 12 years more experience, that's actually kind of a fun project. And if somebody wanted to do something similar, or somebody wanted to do another kind of, here's this goofy thing, instead of me judging it and turning my nose up at it, I would jump on it now, because I don't care what they use it for. What I care about is the artistry involved, and the fact that it will add something that I had not done before to my CV, my painting bibliography, if you will. And I think that would be super kind of fun. Because again, I love taking painting commissions. I love sculpting. I absolutely, one of my players at the Gen Con charity game, Richard Ankney, he had me sculpt a unique D&D figure for one of the characters out of his book, Bjorn Forgefist, I think, for Iron Forge, Bjorn, something. I'd have to look at the or Shield Forge Shield Fred. I don't know. But it was a lot of fun. It's probably one of the better models that I've sculpted too. but I enjoy sculpting to other people's parameters. I really dig it. I dig doing some of those kinds of projects because it lets me kind of flex my creative my creative spiel a bit. But even then, I dig painting commissions. I would love to have time to paint all of my the last. Okay, I got two guys left for Fallout to finish, and then that whole faction as currently it exists is fully painted. I've got a bunch of Dust 1947 guys that need some paint, especially because I finally figured out what I want to do with those guys. So they have announced, as a game, they have announced that they're going to be doing this really cool kind of Mars Attacks looking John Carter of Mars faction called the Vril. These kind of gray aliens in suits, and there's a badass four-armed gorilla combat monkey thing that's going to be one of their big monsters. What sold me on them though is their heavy shock troopers are these lizards in spacesuits with heavy weapons. Like imagine like if the lizards from the Invasion series from the 80s took off all their masks and picked up like laser Gatling guns from Fallout and said, "All right, we're going to war." So I figured out that I think that those are going to be my primary force down the way when those things come out. So I don't mind having my Russians, which is who I do like now. That's my current force. I don't mind those guys being a little painting them up a little goofy. And so when I have time, what I want to do is I want to like putty some masks onto their faces, like ninja style masks, because I want to paint them like Cobra from G.I. Joe. Dark blues, some red accents here and there. My leader commander guy, one of them, I'll put a hood on him so he can be Cobra Commander. I've got this cool flying dude. He's going to get a chrome face so he can be Destro. Like, I know I want to eventually get around to doing that. But in the meantime, I have bills to pay, so commission painting is is actually a pretty big source of my income. And because of that, I am behind on painting my own stuff, which is fine. I don't. It doesn't bother me that I'm behind, because this is fun stuff that I get to do as a job. So I can't be the guy who throws a fit because my awesome job isn't awesome enough. That's silly. That's not an okay way to look at life. Yeah. So I started painting. Here comes the story time of Hobby Time is story time. I started painting roughly 30 years ago, maybe 31, 32 years ago, because my stepbrother, my parents got divorced when I was 7, and shortly thereafter my dad remarried my stepmom Kathy, who had a mostly grown son named Michael. That's my stepbrother. My stepbrother Michael, he painted miniatures, like Ral Partha, old school, like really old school D&D miniatures, and he was really talented. Like I know that he says now that no one would even recognize my stuff, blah blah blah. Which sure, that might be the case, but especially at the time, talents and skills and things were not what they are now. He had skills, and I think that if he would not have gone into the Navy and he would not have continued down the road that he went down, I think that if he would have stuck with it, Michael would be an amazing painter now. I can say that with all honesty. I think that he would be a freakishly good painter if he would have stayed with it. But that would have probably left me not doing it, because when he left to go to the Navy, he had all of these Ral Partha figures, a bunch of which were painted, and he knew that I played D&D. So he gave me his figures, both painted and not, and along with a bunch of brushes and some testers. I was leaned way far back. You guys didn't get to see me paint any of that. That was dumb. Along with some like old school testers paint, which I would never in a million years put in a model now. Maybe a model car, but not a miniature. He left all that stuff to me, and left it. Makes it seem like he's dead. He's not, I promise. Yeah, he gave me all that stuff, and I started trying my hand at painting. And as with anything, artistic or otherwise, unless you've got some kind of weird mutant ability, the first time that you paint anything, it's terrifying. And it was. These were awful. But it still got me. It gave me the bug. It gave me I really want to keep doing this. And so we, like my mom and my friends and I, we figured out where else to buy, where else can I buy figures? Where can we get them? Because in my hometown of Michigan City, there wasn't a straight up game store. The closest thing there was a comic shop called Galactic Greg's over in Valpo, which is a good 20-minute drive. And for someone who's, 13, that's a million miles away. It seems like, you'll never be able to get there. But Galactic Greg's had some gaming stuff. Valparaiso, same city, so same drive. Valparaiso had a hobby, had miniatures and paints, which was the first place I ever picked up an armor, or like an armor cast, or now the Forge World, but like giant 40K miniature. And I remember picking those up and being like, oh my gosh, we'll never get to use those. And now I look at some of the things that are in 40K and be like, all right, never mind. We totally would have been using these in 3s and 4s. But there was a small train shop all the way on the north end of town, which again was still really far for me. Although I lived in Michigan City, technically, I lived about as far out in the country as you possibly could get and still be considered in city limits, as far as like schools were concerned. So I was definitely, I grew up out in the country, not in the city. So there was no me getting on my bike and heading to the hobby shop. I basically had to wait until next time mom was going into town, or go with my grandpa or something like that, and be like, hey, can you drop me off at this place? And I can't even remember the name of that train shop. I want to say it was called B&O Hobbies, because I remember making fun of, that it's body odor hobbies, which is a terrible thing to do, because I'm sure this guy, put his blood and sweat into this. But either way, it was a hobby shop that he had a handful, just a handful of like role-playing game magazines, maybe 15 or 20 pegs worth of whatever he could get his mitts on. And that was it. That was pretty much the extent of my ability to get gaming materials until I was almost 16. And that was when the Games Workshop store in Maryville opened up. And we were able to bounce over there and get stuff every once in a while. But that was, that was a good half an hour ride. And again, when you're 16, half an hour in the car is forever. Like it was a hell of a trip for you to go and pick up a $10 blister of Space Marines or whatever. So getting hobby stuff meant, this was a significant portion of your free time. This was monetarily, I didn't have much of a job at that time. I was working at one of our local campgrounds, cleaning toilets and cleaning out the pool with awesome chemicals that would dissolve anything that you put in it, like a nickel. But that was basically what I spent almost all my money on, was on gaming materials. And whether it was painting stuff or, the next Monster Manual compendium upgrade or whatever, that's where I was spending most of my money, was on gaming stuff. And what that did is that basically let me focus on gaming as my primary hobby. Yeah, I played a little baseball. Yeah, I played hockey. Yeah, I played, I skateboarded a lot. But when it came to what was occupying my brain and what kept me going, it was almost always going to be gaming. Whether it was the next game I was going to play with my friends or whether I'm going to come home and paint. And it became such a big part of my life that from when I moved from my upstairs room down into kind of the basement suite as a teenager, gaming took priority over things like my bed. I didn't have a bed in my bedroom. I had a futon that was on the floor. Like, basically, I slept on a mattress by choice. Not because we were broke and not because, there wasn't room for one. I chose to have a paint table or a game table taking up the majority of my room instead of having a bed. And that continued on until I was like 19 or 20 in college. Every one of my apartments, the bed was like the first thing to go, and boom, game table went in, painting table went in. Like when I was looking at apartments, I was okay, where am I going to set up my paint desk? Where am I going to set up my game table? Because that was more important to me than, do I need a dresser for all my clothes? No way. It was way more punk rock to live out of one closet. And that was where, where all this kind of this stuff led to, is focusing on painting and focusing on that. I would paint every day if I could. And it was the kind of thing that worked. It was the kind of thing that kept me out of trouble most of the time. Because if I was having a rough week, if I was just stressed out beyond belief, I knew that I could go home and throw on a movie, throw on some music, and just dive into whatever I was painting at the time. And it really was it became kind of my therapy. And you fast forward as time moves on, it maintains to this day the way for me. Like if I'm truly exhausted, like just mentally, physically, bleh, I can sit down in front of the TV and watch some TV, watch a cartoon, watch some Rick and Morty, whatever, and be fine. But if I am like really just like, I'm not physically exhausted, but I am just mentally taxed, I know that I can come in here into the studio, shut my door, put on my sign that says, "Hey, leave me alone. I'm dealing with some daddy stuff," and I can paint and like paint my blues away because I get so into what I'm doing, I lose track of time. Oh, speaking of which, oh yeah, we are running long. I lose track of time. I get sucked into, I start thinking about, the next time, if I'm painting role-playing miniatures, I start thinking about the next time that these models are going to get used. If I am thinking about, or if I'm painting, like in this case, I'm painting these Fallout barricades, if this was a de-stress paint, like if I was doing this to, get out of my head, I would start thinking about, I'd start planning, hey, how could I use these things in one of the scenarios that I'm writing for Modifius? Or should I should I make sure these are done by the next time the client and I are gonna play together, if we're going to, like, should we plan on these being available next time we play? It's just like it allows my brain to focus on the better parts of my life. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but gaming is one of the better parts of my life. It gives me an escape. It allows me to set aside the fact that, oh, this bill is overdue, or oh, the medical people are calling again because hospitals are expensive and stupid. Like there's, it lets me absolutely just sort of sink in and be gone. And it reminds me of a time that, so, all right, I'll do one more story, and then we'll go ahead and close out so this video doesn't take up a million hours. One of my best friends, sadly we don't talk nearly as much as we used to because he has moved away multiple times. We both have families, that sort of thing. But one of my best friends is a gentleman by the name of Christopher. And Christopher and I would paint and paint and paint all hours of the night. To the point where there is no question why my schooling slipped. We would do all night paint marathons. Not even necessarily like, hey, let's do that. Let's get together. Like we wouldn't necessarily plan on, hey, let's get together and paint all night. It would just be, hey, you want to come over and paint tonight? Sure, I'll come over and paint tonight. And we would get to talking and discussing movies and comics and gaming and all the things that we love while we're painting, kind of like what I'm doing here, just sort of a stream of consciousness kind of thing. And before you knew it, somebody would get up to go to the bathroom or realize, man, I'm hungry. What time is it? Holy hell, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And at that point, you kind of have this decision to make of, do you just press on? Because when you're an 18, 19, physically, you totally can just press on. I have a harder time doing it now because I'm old. But, do you just press on and keep on painting? Stay in that groove, stay in, the mode that you're in? Or do you stop now, catch some sleep, and hope tomorrow isn't completely screwed up by the fact that, you only got, half of the sleep you normally need? Or is it a day where you can just say, screw it, I'm going to sleep in and not see the sun? These are things that you had to question and you could ask at that time, and we quite often did ask each other that, hey, are you just going to keep going, or do you want to take a nap, you want to crash on the couch? That was just how we did things. And the painting aspect of it, I got so much stuff done. I to this day, I think that, I enjoy painting in my studio. I enjoy having my me time where the world is set aside and put away. But I do still paint better, I think. Not necessarily like skill-wise, but like more more efficient. I still think that I paint more efficiently when I am talking, when I am listening to other people, when there are other people painting with me that we can, bounce ideas off of and go, hey, what color do you think should go here? Or, I hate the new Night Goblin models. What do you think I can do to make these better? Which is not true. I love the goblins. But I still think that to this day I paint better or more proficiently or more efficiently when I have social interaction during that same time, and it is definitely something that I miss. Another one of my really close friends, a gentleman by the name of Tony. Tony would join us quite a bit on those painting marathons, and we would get so much done. And we would go to tournaments and take our freshly painted stuff, and people would be like, "Didn't you just have this? Didn't you just get this, Army?" And we'd be like, "Yeah," and they would be shocked and in awe that we painted so fast. And not to necessarily pat ourselves on the back, but we were all very proficient painters as well. The Christopher I was talking about, he is I don't know if he's painted anything in a long time, but he was one of the best miniature painters that I knew. That I learned a lot watching him. Tony was where I learned a lot of my love for conversions. Taking these two models and ripping them to pieces and putting them together, and here's this cool thing I found on a toy at the toy store in the mall. I'm going to use this as the cannon on my brand new something or other. And there was a certain kind of love and imagination that he had for that sort of thing. That I guarantee that's where some of my love for conversions and kit bashing and that sort of stuff, where that came from, was all those many hours staying up late and having a great time. And although I do still get to occasionally have like painting nights with over Skype with friends of mine, I don't think it's the same. I mean, it's really great, and I love the camaraderie, electronic or otherwise. But it isn't the same, and those are feelings that I will treasure forever. Those long nights of painting till the sun came up, or one particular evening painting till our eyes were dry, and we had to leave and do something. We had to get out of that house. That apartment was just bedraggling our brains. So we collectively, it was like 4 of us at that night. We got out and we went and walked. Like I said, this is a campus town. It's a university town, so if you go walking more often than not, you're gonna end up on campus. And I remember us walking down the main drag and getting to one of the ladies' dormitories. And it's summertime, so the windows are open. Some people have their lights on. It's like 2 a.m, and there were a couple of ladies in one of their windows, and we're loud because we're walking down the street doing as we do, and it became kind of they were talking to us from their like 4th or 5th story window, shouting down, talking to us. And I don't know how the topic came up, but we ended up singing to them. Like, God, I don't even remember what song, but it was one of the classics, like "Stand By Me" or something like that. And we ended up serenading these 2 random, college kids from their window uh, because we were bored and we were crazy, goofy guys out walking around at 2 in the morning. And I remember, the conversation. I remember us doing at least one of us was doing like rhythm bopping in the background, and then Tony was had a very alpha personality, so I'm sure he was probably trying to sing, one of the leads. Uh, but it was just a goofy, crazy night. That if it wasn't for this camaraderie, this kind of collective love for social painting, we would have never randomly done that. We wouldn't have randomly walked out and talked to these people. It was crazy. It was a great night. I remember another time. So this is perfect because I get to see him again next week. One of my best friends in the world, by the name of, he's another Bryan. His Bryan Crestus. He he was one of these all night painters. He was one of our gaming friends. He was an amazing painter as well. But he would, in the middle of a game, like stop what he's doing, run over to the where his guitar and amp were, and like just break into random songs. It was like, here, I'm gonna play some Howl of the Moon for no reason, just madness, kind of crazy stuff that makes you laugh at 3 in the morning. And I remember him, myself, and Chris. We went for a walk one night. Yeah, where you get out there, and if it's quiet, you start getting out there and talking about kind of deep stuff. You get into family, you get into, like these are the conversations that friendships are kind of born on, or at least like steadfast, made forever. And I remember we were doing that. We were talking, we were walking, we were talking, we were walking, and instead of going up on campus, one time we decided to kind of turn left instead of turning right, and we ended up so far off the beaten track that we were like all the way out by like the Boy Scout camp, miles away from where we lived, and where we decided to take our short jaunt. And I remember having that feeling of like, we're going to be walking until sunrise to get home. And it was great. It was an awesome feeling to be with friends that I hope will be with me in some capacity forever. And as kind of an example of this, the Bryan that I was just talking about, he lives several states away from me, sadly. But he is coming into town next week for Gen Con. And so we planned some events we get to play together. We're obviously going to have dinner and drinks and stuff several times. But it really will be. I wish I could get Chris to join us, but he's sort of soured on gaming a little bit. He doesn't really do it anymore. And Gen Con, I'm sure, would be a big expense and a very big trip for him, because he also doesn't live here in town. He lives closer than Bry does, but not right here. But regardless to any of that, I just would love to get the gang back together sometime. Even if it's electronic like this, get everybody on camera so we can sit down and paint and talk, and go back to when we were 19 and 20, and didn't have 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds of our own that we have to make sure, if I painted all night, I would have to make sure that I go and get my kids up for school the next day, and this is not something I can really do anymore. it's not in my not in my list of stuff that should happen every day. And I think I do believe that did I paint that one? Wish you. Oh no, it just dried funny. Um, I think that, is it doable? Could I physically have an all-night painting thing? Sure. I would pay for it the next day. There's no question in that. I would be a disaster case. But I love this part of the hobby. You know, I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, I hate painting my models. But even if they weren't like skilled painters, even when I didn't have like tips and tricks and teach classes and stuff, I still just really loved the concept of painting, the concept of putting my own personal spin on these models, and for people to one day take a look at them. You know, for every time I would have a model that I personally was like, ugh, maybe I do not care for that paint job, I would still have 10 people or more that would look at the paint jobs and go, man, I've never done anything like that. I don't paint my models. And I guess moral of the story is, if you paint, whether you love it, whether you hate it, if you put paint on model and make these models your own, there will be people out there that will appreciate that. Myself included, whether or not they're the most amazing paint job or whether or not it's just, you slap some paint on there to try and match it up as best you can. If you tried and it came up with a good model, or it came up with a model that a finished product, you've done better than, I would say, half to 60% of the gamers out there. There's a lot of people out there that just play with unpainted models because the game is way more important to them than the hobby. They don't care about that part. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying that for when you're discussing the hobby aspect of things, if you do it at all, you are already leagues ahead of the people who don't do it. So hopefully you do it with your friends. Hopefully you paint with others, and you enjoy all of that, and it gets to be something that you can love. But if it doesn't, and it's just always a chore, at least you're doing it, at least you're trying it, at least you're making that effort. Or you can always find a commission painter like myself who does enjoy it, and pay us to make your models pretty for you. Whatever the case may be, I have definitely ran long today. It's a hobby day, so hobby time, story time, long time. Let's see if my that resin is not cured yet. All right, so I'm not going to be popping those out. I'll just show you. But so yeah, so let's wrap this up and pop back over to the other computer and record the kind of the final goodbyes before we take some time off. So we'll see you over there.
Alright, everybody. Well, that was fun. Hope you enjoyed watching me put some paint on some stuff and tell a couple of little tales of Bryan on this fabulous hobby day before getting us all ready for Gen Con. So again, just to reiterate, not going to have an official next episode, or an official episode next week. Probably go live once or twice from Gen Con floor. But aside from that, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Hopefully, if everything goes well, we don't get any technical snafus, knock on wood, that with the actual video from the Spelljammer charity event. I'm dying to see you guys, or I'm dying for you guys to see us enjoy and roleplay and portray some of this cool story, and hopefully we get to see some fun interactions with the audience, because that's what the whole thing's about. So we will we'll see you then. Until then, whether you're at Gen Con or not, whether you're at home or whether you're at the game shop, go have some fun and play some games. We'll see ya.